Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Women in Math and STEM, where our mission is to reach out to as many professionals, aspiring professionals, students, whatever you name it. We try to reach out to them, who essentially support the initiative of bringing more women and young girls into the STEM field. So, with that being said, as always, feel free to open up the description or transcript to better follow along, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hello, and thank you so much for being able to make it today and sort of speak with me on this episode. Just to sort of begin, do you mind briefly introducing yourself as well as walking us through your math journey?
Sure. My name is Dr. Ralph Pantozzi. I've been a math teacher for 32 years, and the last 13 of them at the Kent Place School for Girls in Summit, New Jersey. And currently, I'm working as a Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellow at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. My math journey has been a long walk. Sometimes it's been a crawl. Sometimes I get to ride a bicycle or some other form of transportation. Sometimes it's fast like a train, but it's really all been a journey with other people, and it's been about communicating with other people. We're none of us are on this journey by ourselves, and all the people who have been with me on this math journey, way too many to mention in your podcast today, but we've all taught each other and inspired each other to keep going because, sometimes the math journey is difficult. So all of us on that journey, we've noticed each other as people first, and then we get to the math second. So that kind of thinking, that making math personal, is what inspired me to work towards earning the presidential award that I got 8 years ago. And all those people impacted my career because meeting one person helps you meet someone else, and then that person helps you meet two more people. And you end up with this big crowd of people who all are into math and into all sorts of things that you wouldn't have predicted in advance. So my math journey leaves me with advice for other people. It's know that cooperation is important and that it's okay to change directions on your math journey. And not knowing exactly what you're going to do next is all a natural part of the process.
Sounds really amazing. And then I was also wondering when it comes to teaching, what your teaching philosophy was, and how exactly do you encourage students to excel in math or other STEM subjects?
Yeah, I don't know much that I have so much of philosophy, but I do have practical advice. You have to give students time to think. You have to give them time to communicate with each other and time to listen to each other as well. The most important thing, I mean, math is all about relationships between ideas. And we forget sometimes that it's also about relationships between people. When you can talk to someone, they are often able to help you work out your thinking. So everyone I know who's excelled in math never really did it alone. And so to help students reach excellence in their studies, I first tell them to talk with as many people as you can. And you'll find that's true both in, I've worked with fourth graders and I've worked with university mathematicians as well. And all of them, I learned this advice from them that I'll pass on to your podcast watchers and listeners, is that as a teacher, you have to find tasks for students that are just at the right difficulty level. Not too easy that you get bored and not too difficult that you get frustrated. A little frustration is good, but being a good teacher and helping my students, it means helping my students excel in math. And that means I need to know them well and figure out just what question and what task to place in front of them at that moment. So they'll take that next leap forward. That's what I think is the key to effective teaching.
That makes a lot of sense. I was also just curious about maybe how exactly you specifically encourage girls or maybe other underrepresented groups in math or students just in general who might not be initially interested or might be a little bit intimidated by like math or science to continue to pursue those fields.
Yeah, mathematicians often hide the fact that they're intimidated at times. When you've worked it all out, you seem really brilliant, and everyone looks at you and goes, wow, how'd you do that? And you might say it's all up to me. But uh, talking to students and over my career, I've been in situations where I had unique opportunities to observe students learning everything from the most basic ideas to calculus and beyond, and to encourage girls in particular and students who might not think they fit into the math mold. Uh, I'll repeat a little bit about what I said about community. If you believe there's a community there behind you, you're more willing to persevere. And when that community listens to you and honors your ideas and says, I don't quite understand what you just said, but talk to me a little more. That kind of thing is what draws people in who might see math as cold and unemotional at the start. Uh, in this sort of same vein, hands-on activities, experiments, real-world applications, these are all essential to encouraging learners to move forward with math. Uh, every human, no matter where they're coming from, they make connections between mathematics and their own experiences. So giving students the opportunity to test out their ideas and say, hey, does this apply to what I'm doing at home or on the sports field? We just don't think we think with more than our brains. We think with our, I'm doing it right now. We think with our hands and we think with our senses and uh, believing in yourself. Confidence isn't something that stays constant throughout your career as a mathematician. So uh, when as a teacher, I've helped girls get out in their own real world and see where math can be used and find where it can be found and recognize that their grandma's doing math and everyone else is also doing math. They imagine themselves in that role. And just recently, I was at NASA as part of the Einstein Fellowship, and I met a person, and she said, "I am an expert in sewing, and now I'm working at NASA sewing blankets for the Hubble Space Telescope." So telling these stories as well, and then having these people connecting my students with stories of other people. Again, it's all about community, right? There's so many people out there who are engaged in math. There are those, the movie Hidden Figures, right? There are thousands of hidden figures out there right now, and helping my students make connections with them, whether they watch a YouTube video like your podcast or they uh, see something from NASA, is going to help them uh, get into the STEM fields and recognize that it's for them.
That's pretty neat. I was also just curious about like throughout your career and experiences as a teacher, sort of what are some lessons you've learned and maybe like what's the most important lesson if you had to like pinpoint it down to one.
Whoa, yeah. Uh, I think the most important lesson is that it's important to listen. Teaching, is of course about explaining things to other people, but you're not going to know what explanation to give unless you listen to what the student gives in response. And it's not just, okay, you got that wrong, let me try something different. It's really about listening to students. And oh, I like repeating myself sometimes, so I'm repeating this again. Math is about relationships. There's functions and there's all those things, you input and output and all the math that you've learned. And that's the same as when you're learning math. You're looking to make connections and you're looking to find a route from one idea to another. So since every student brings their own real world into their math class, I might have a real world application, but if I listen to them first and understand that there was a student last year, she understood inverse functions by thinking about boomerang. And I was not going to think about a boomerang, but she said, the numbers go into one function and come back, and they come back the same after you've done the composition. So if I, as a teacher, can let students bring their real world into the classroom, and I take that time to listen, and maybe I can even, I have to remember what it's like to be a student. I think that's the most important lesson I've learned as a teacher.
I see, sounds really cool. And then sort of like similarly on the topic of education, what do you sort of see maybe like your next steps being and how do you sort of see yourself in the future maybe continuing to make that impact on STEM education?
Yeah, this fellowship that I'm on right now, with 15 other teachers who have been placed in different locations in Washington, D.C. to learn from people at cybersecurity and at the Department of Energy, and me and another one are at the Library of Congress. There's people at United States Geographic Survey where they're learning about rocks and geology and floods and things. So at the top of the podcast, I spoke about we're all on a journey someplace, and we're going to bump into lots of people along the way. So I, I I think, as I said earlier, I don't know what I'm doing next in my career for sure, but this year I'm meeting lots of people, thinking about and learning, listening to them and learning what they're doing because they've lived different lives, and they've given me perspectives that I wouldn't have thought of for myself. So whatever I'm going to do next, I want to continue to try to connect people together like you're doing, Angelina. And, everybody from politicians to parents and, math education goes on in libraries. It goes on at school clubs and tutoring centers. It goes on in homes around the world. And so I'm trying to get connected with more communities of people. So again, thank you for, inviting me to this YouTube podcast. Uh, yeah, I don't know. And that repeats what I said about the lesson. It's okay not to know exactly what you're going to do next, but I think uh, it's all about, when you bring a diversity of people together who haven't all had the same experiences, I think all the great ideas we've ever had come out of a group like that. So I want to try to be a part of more groups in my future.
I think that's a really inspiring mindset to have. And I guess sort of to end off, I was curious as to what advice you'd give high school students like myself who are passionate about math and STEM and maybe possibly considering a career in this field.
Yeah, I was recently judging there's a national STEM festival in Washington, D.C. that'll be happening soon. And, it's a contest where people create their inventions and do experiments. And this one person had one that was trying to make a better walker for the elderly so that they wouldn't fall. And so, what's my advice for high school students? It's make friends with lots of people, share your ideas with lots of people. I just learned about a woman who uh, was it loved jump roping, and then she ended up inventing a jump roping machine that had never been invented before to do the double Dutch kind of jump roping. So rather than having two people at the end, her machine does it, and then she was ended up being highlighted by the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. So all those things happened because those people weren't working alone. They had skills, they had a good mindset of not giving up. They know they figuring things out took some time, but I think what the most important thing I've learned from them and the advice I'm giving back to your viewers is, don't keep your good ideas to yourself. Run that idea by someone else, run it by your friends, run it by someone who doesn't like you and see if they can shoot it down and you can make it better. There's all sorts of things that you can do with this. Uh, you know, Math for me is about stories. And so the advice I have for students is that you never know when someone else's story is going to make a difference in your own thinking or help you get over that rough patch in the journey. I've been there many times when I thought, nah, no more math for me. And then I met somebody and like, oh, I didn't realize. So yeah, that's my advice for students. Keep making new friends.
Sounds good. I guess once again, thank you so much for taking the time for being able to make it today and speaking with me. I really appreciated your insight and it was really amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.